There is a peculiar silence in the offices of the most accomplished people on earth, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of protection. Walk into the workspace of a visionary entrepreneur, a Nobel Prize winner, or a master craftsperson, and you'll notice something the rest of us rarely achieve. They have fewer things, fewer meetings, fewer projects, fewer obligations, and yet, paradoxically, they create more. This is not accident, it is the signature of brilliance. We live in an age that worships expansion. Culture sends us relentless messages: say yes to opportunities, never turn down a networking event, take the extra project, volunteer for the committee, attend the conference, accept the invitation, maximize, optimize, hustle. The logic seems airtight: more is more, and those who achieve the most must simply be doing more of everything. We assume that the equation of success is simple: capacity plus effort equals results. But the most brilliant minds understood something that contradicts our cultural narrative entirely. They learned that the inverse is true. The power they discovered was not the power of yes, it was the power of no. Consider the cognitive weight you carry every single day. Each commitment you make, each project accepted, each email obligation, each social engagement occupies real estate in your mind. Psychologists call this decision load. Every yes is a thread woven into the fabric of your attention, and threads, when become chains. The human brain has a finite capacity for focus. This isn't philosophy, it's neuroscience. Studies on decision fatigue show that the more choices we make, the lower the quality of those choices becomes. We deplete our executive function like a battery running down. By the time the afternoon arrives, by the time the week winds down, our ability to think clearly has fractured into scattered fragments. Yet we keep saying yes. We say yes because we fear the cost of saying no. We fear being perceived as uncommitted, selfish, or unambitious. We fear missing an opportunity that might never come again. We fear disappointing others. We fear the discomfort of the word itself. No feels harsh, final, rejecting. So we soften it, we delay it, we say maybe instead. And maybe becomes yes by default. What we don't see in those moments of capitulation is the hidden cost we're paying. Every yes to something mediocre is a no to something exceptional. Every meeting you attend is time stolen from deep work. Every project you accept is energy diverted from mastery. Every obligation you assume is a small theft from your own potential. The cost isn't visible in the moment. There's no flash of red warning light, but it accumulates in the background like compound interest in reverse. This is where brilliant minds diverge from the rest of us. They understand something essential about how exceptional work actually gets created. It requires not just time, but protected time. It requires not just effort, but focused effort. It requires the courage to be brutally selective about where their finite genius gets deployed. Steve Jobs, in his later years, was known for wearing the same outfit every day, not out of eccentricity, but out of profound wisdom. He had eliminated trivial decisions to preserve mental energy for what mattered. He said no to fashion, to shopping, to the tyranny of choice, so he could say yes to innovation with his full mind intact. Maya turned away speaking engagements, teaching positions, and lucrative opportunities regularly. When asked why she was so selective, she responded that she needed solitude to write, and that every yes to someone else's agenda was a no to her art. Warren spends most of his days reading and thinking. In meetings about his company, he is often silent. He has deliberately constructed a life where he says no to the majority of what crosses his desk, preserving his yes for only the most critical decisions. These are not examples of people who lack ambition or capacity. They are examples of people who have learned the deepest truth about human potential, that greatness is not a function of volume, it is a function of focus. And focus, by definition, requires elimination. The psychological burden of this realization runs deep. For most of us, the path to our current life was paved with yeses. We said yes to build our careers, our relationships, our responsibilities. The architecture of our lives is constructed from accumulated commitments. To suddenly start saying no feels like dismantling the very thing we built. And yet, this is precisely where transformation begins. Brilliant minds understand that their most valuable resource is not time, it is attention. And attention, unlike time, cannot be divided. You cannot be half present in a meeting while also being fully present in your creative work. You cannot commit to two conflicting priorities with equal excellence. The brain does not work that way. It is a system of trade-offs, and every trade-off carries a cost measured in the quality of your output and the integrity of your focus. The turning point comes when you stop viewing no as a negative word, when you reframe it from rejection to protection, when you understand that saying no to others is, ultimately, saying yes to yourself, to your work, your values, your vision, and your peace. This is the beginning of brilliance. Saying no without a clear framework is merely avoidance. It's the of someone who is afraid, not someone who is powerful. True brilliance requires a different approach, one built on architecture, not impulse. Exceptional people don't say no randomly. They say no strategically, guided by a crystal-clear vision of what they're protecting. The first step in the power of no is this: you must know your yes. Before you can protect anything, you must define what deserves protection. This requires ruthless clarity about your core, the 2 to 3 non-negotiable priorities that align with your deepest values and highest genius. For a surgeon, it might be patient care and continuous learning in their specialty. For a writer, it might be the daily practice of creation and the relationships that feed their soul. For a scientist, it might be original research and the next generation. For a parent, it might be presence with their children and meaningful work that their gifts. This clarity cannot be vague. It cannot be aspirational or theoretical. It must be specific enough to be actionable. It must be clear enough that when an opportunity arrives, and opportunities arrive constantly, you can hold it up to your core and ask the critical question: does this align with my essential yes? If the answer is no, or even uncertain, then the word you speak must be no. The tragedy of most people's lives is not that they failed to pursue their dreams. It is that they never defined them clearly enough to recognize which opportunities served them and which ones were distractions wearing the mask of opportunity. The cost of misaligned yes. Let's be concrete about what happens when you say yes to the wrong things. A talented manager accepts a promotion to a larger team. It comes with prestige, a salary increase, and the validation she's always sought. But her core is mentorship, the deep, transformative work of developing individuals into their best selves. The larger role demands her time in strategy meetings and political navigation. Within 6 months, she realizes she hasn't had a meaningful one-on-one conversation with a direct report in weeks. She's created more distance from what made her brilliant. The yes cost her dearly. A creative professional says yes to a lucrative consulting gig. The money is needed. The client is prestigious, but his core is original creation, building something that didn't exist before. The consulting demands his best thinking on their problems, leaving him depleted for his own work. A year passes. His art hasn't advanced. His voice hasn't deepened. He has successfully traded his potential for someone else's. A founder says yes to every investor meeting, every speaking opportunity, every networking event. She tells herself she's building connections and visibility, but her core is building the company itself, the product, the culture, the vision. She's become a performer in her own story rather than the architect. The company stalls. The opportunity was never real. It was a distraction. These aren't failures of ambition. They are failures of alignment. The yeses were rational, even logical, but they were misaligned with what actually mattered. This is why the architecture must come first. You need a decision-making framework so clear that when pressure arrives, and it always does, you're not deciding in the moment. You're simply executing a decision you've already made. The language of graceful boundaries. Here's where many people stumble. They believe that saying no requires explanation, justification, or lengthy apology. They construct elaborate reasons. They soften the blow. They say things like, "I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm currently focused on other priorities, and I want to give you someone who can fully commit." This is well-intentioned, but it's exhausting for you and for them. The most brilliant minds have learned something simpler. No is a complete sentence. But no delivered with grace is even more powerful. There's a difference between the no of rejection and the no of protection. Rejection is harsh. It's about the other person not being good enough. Protection is about your work being too important to compromise. A master might say, "I appreciate you thinking of me. I'm deeply committed to my current work, and I protect that fiercely. I can't give you what you deserve, so I'm going to say no. I hope you understand." There's no apology. There's no elaborate justification. There's clarity and respect. Another approach, "That's not aligned with where I'm investing my energy right now. I recommend you reach out to person who would be a better fit." This redirects without creating pressure. Or simply, "No, but thank you for thinking of me." The remarkable thing happens when you say no this way consistently. People begin to understand that your yes actually means something. It means you've chosen them, not defaulted to accepting. Your commitment becomes more valuable precisely because it's rare. Protection as sacred investment. This is the psychological shift that separates ordinary people from exceptional ones. They begin to view saying no not as deprivation, but as investment. When you say no to a meeting that doesn't serve your core, you are saying yes to 3 uninterrupted hours of deep work. When you say no to a social obligation that depletes you, you are saying yes to rest that makes you more present with those you love. When you say no to a project that dilutes your focus, you are saying yes to mastery in your actual craft. This reframing is not semantic trick. It's a fundamental shift in how you experience your choices. Jeff, in his shareholder letters, has repeatedly emphasized the importance of what he calls slow-moving decisions that affect your long-term trajectory and therefore deserve protection from the noise of daily urgency. He and Amazon say no to countless things because they are protected by a vision of what matters years from now. Williams, at the height of her career, said no to sponsorships, appearances, and tournaments that didn't align with her core, winning grand slams and building her legacy. She was ruthless about protecting her energy for what mattered most. That selectivity is part of what made her the greatest. The architect of strategic no understands something crucial. Your attention is your most finite resource. You will die. Before you do, you have a certain number of hours, days, and years. Some portion of those will be consumed by obligations and necessities. What remains is precious beyond measure. The question is not whether you have time for everything. You don't. The question is, what will you protect your time for? Once you answer that, the power of no becomes not a burden, but a liberation. There is a mathematical principle at work in the lives of truly exceptional people, and it is one that most of us never fully grasp. It is the principle of compound elimination. We all understand compound interest, the idea that small, consistent gains multiply over time into exponential wealth. Albert allegedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. But there is a mirror principle that is equally powerful and far less discussed: the compound effect of subtraction. When you eliminate one distraction today, you don't just gain the time back. You gain something far more valuable. You gain focus. That focus compounds. It deepens your expertise. It sharpens your intuition. It allows you to see patterns that scattered minds cannot perceive. It enables you to do work that is not just better, but categorically different in quality. A pianist who practices 3 hours of focused, protected time every day will, in 5 years, develop a mastery that someone practicing 6 hours across fragmented sessions cannot match. The difference is not in the total hours. It is in the coherence of attention. It is in the mind's ability to go deep, to build neural pathways, to develop intuition about the instrument that only emerges when you're not constantly context switching. The same is true for any meaningful work. When you say no to the constant stream of emails and notifications, you are not just gaining quiet time. You are allowing your brain to enter a state called deep flow, a state where your best thinking happens. In that state, problems that seemed unsolvable suddenly yield. Connections between disparate ideas become visible. Innovation emerges not from effort, but from the spaciousness you've created for your mind to wander and wonder. When you say no to meetings that don't require your presence, you are not just reclaiming hours. You are protecting the continuity of thought that makes complex work possible. Research on context switching shows that when you interrupt deep work, it takes an average of 23 minutes to return to full cognitive capacity. Every meeting you eliminate is not just the time of the meeting, it's the restoration of cognitive coherence. When you say no to projects that dilute your focus, you are not just managing your workload, you are investing in the compounding returns of expertise. Malcolm popularized the 10,000-hour rule from research by the idea that true mastery requires roughly 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. But there's something didn't emphasize enough. Those 10,000 hours must be continuous and concentrated. They cannot be fragmented across a dozen different pursuits. Mastery is not a democracy of your attention. It demands sovereignty. This is why the most brilliant minds in history often appear monomaniacal from the outside. They are not lacking in range or curiosity. They are strategically narrowing their focus to achieve depth that makes them irreplaceable. And that depth, over time, compounds into a kind of power that cannot be matched by those spreading their energy across many fronts. The transformation that begins with no. Consider a composite story, one that echoes across the lives of countless people who discovered this truth. She was a talented marketing executive, capable and well-liked. Her calendar was a masterpiece she was on 3 committees, 5 junior employees, attending every all-hands meeting, saying yes to every speaking request, maintaining a presence at every networking event. She was busy. Everyone knew she was busy. She wore her busyness like a badge. But something was hollow at the center. One day, during a particularly brutal week where she'd moved 3 deadlines and cancelled on her family twice, she had a small crisis of conscience. She asked herself a simple question: what am I actually building here? And the answer terrified her. She wasn't building anything. She was maintaining. She was performing competence. She was managing the appearance of being indispensable while actually being dispersed across so many things that nothing bore the mark of her genius. So she did something radical. She quit one of the committees. She reduced her mentees from 5 to 2. She blocked off 3 mornings a week as deep work time, no meetings, no calls, just her and the strategic work that only she could do. She started saying no to networking events. She politely declined speaking requests unless they were truly aligned with her core. The first month was uncomfortable. She worried about being perceived as less committed. She second-guessed herself. By month 3, something shifted. She completed a strategic initiative that became the blueprint for the company's next phase. Her mentees, working with her in deeper conversations, experienced accelerated growth. Her insights in meetings became sharper because she was actually thinking, not just reacting. She had more genuine presence with her family because when she was there, not half present, mentally rehearsing the 17 things still on her plate. A year later, she was promoted, not because she was doing more, because what she was doing had become exceptional. This is not a story about luck. It's a story about what becomes possible when you stop treating your attention as a renewable resource and start treating it as the finite, sacred thing that it actually is. The closing power of no. We began with a paradox. The most accomplished people say no more than anyone else. Now we can see why. It's not that they have more discipline or less ambition. It's that they understand something fundamental about how human potential actually works. You cannot optimize your way to brilliance through addition. You cannot become exceptional by saying yes to everything. You cannot build mastery while fragmenting your focus. You cannot create impact while diluting your energy. But you can do all of these things through subtraction, through the ruthless, courageous, ongoing practice of saying no to good things so you can say yes to the essential things, through protecting your attention like it's the most valuable asset you'll ever own, because it is. The power of no is not about scarcity, it's about sovereignty. It's about reclaiming authority over your own life, your own work, your own genius. It's about understanding that every yes to someone else's agenda is a no to your own, and every no to their agenda is a yes to your own potential. In the end, the question is not whether you have the capacity to do more. You probably do. The question that matters is whether you have the courage to do less, so that what you do becomes truly exceptional. That is where brilliance lives, not in the volume, in the depth, not in the noise, in the signal, not in the scattered energy of 1,000 small yeses, in the fierce, protected, sacred yes to what actually matters. The power of no is the ultimate power, and it begins the moment you claim it.